Yeah?
Yeah.
All right then. Through to my number one, which is EA Sports UFC, quite predictably. I reviewed this game for Eurogamer, which you can read now. It's on their website, and ended up dropping a 7 out of 10 on it. I played a ton, to be honest. Single player, and now the game is out in the States. We're recording this on a Wednesday, so the game's been out in the States since Tuesday. There's plenty of people to play online, and the game is actually better online. So, yeah, I've talked about it before. I've talked about how the different elements of the game work from the demo, and I must say that straight away there's a day one patch on the final version, and a lot of the demo has been cleaned up for the final version. A lot of the physics errors, a lot of the little niggles here and there, stuff about how you can't move each other in the clinch, things like that. A lot of that's been cleaned up, and the final version is definitely feels more finished, and it also kind of shows how rushed this project's been. That they only felt like they had just over a year and a half to go from nothing to final product, which is including building an engine. And yeah, there is a lot of elements of the game where you can feel that it's quite bare bones outside of the cage. You know, there's like a very kind of sparse career mode, which is. It's got like weird FMV footage that pops up, and like fighters just send you, like just the most random fighters just send you messages like, "Hey man, I saw your last fight." It's like, what the fuck are you calling me? It's like, you're not even in the game. But yeah, and then there's like the online mode, which is basically the same as FIFA Seasons mode, where you fight like a season of fights, and you're trying to get promoted to white belt to blue belt to purple belt, brown and black. And there are different divisions and stuff. That actually works really well, and it's definitely a game that needs to be played in multiplayer, I think, because the AI just isn't quite good enough to be able to have the types of matches that the game can let you have when you're fighting someone a bit more strategic. The AI just kind of charges you and throws hooks, and you can have some good scraps and some real like brawls with the AI, but you can't really have a strategic fight because it's constantly just pressing forward, swinging at you. Not as good as EA MMA's AI, not as good as probably Undisputed 3's AI, but you can't really slate what is essentially a fighting game, even though it's a sports game, for having a less than perfect single player. You wouldn't do that on Street Fighter, you wouldn't do that on Tekken, so you can't really complain too much here either, I don't think. And it does shine in two-player mode. It's difficult to talk about a game like this because I don't want to go too in depth. And at the same time, I don't want to like patronise people by trying to explain every single facet of the sport either, because it's a very popular sport. It's not as popular as football or something like that, but I think plenty of people do understand the different elements these days. It's not like it perhaps was 5 years ago. So it's kind of striking that balance when I'm talking about the game. I've certainly found this when I was reviewing it and putting those down in a kind of finite number of words, exactly whereabouts to pitch the level of what you're talking about the game. Not that I'm trying to position myself as some sort of expert, but the fact of the matter is I'm a huge fan, and I do train in the sport, so it's just something to kind of find that balance to talk about, and wondering how much some of the stuff that might niggle me would affect someone who's not as into the sport and just kind of enjoys the spectacle of two amazing looking in the game guys beating the crap out of each other.
Yeah. I really like your review. I thought it was it's a fantastic piece of work, and you pitched it really. Sorry, man. You pitched it really well. Like I don't watch UFC, though I appreciate the kind of art of MMA, I guess. And I really like what you're saying about how people were doing cartwheel kicks. Like that's a really easy move to pull off, and it's something that's only ever been successfully done like a few times, relatively speaking. And I think you pitched it really well, because you kind of you make the case in a really simple way that there are certain parts of this sport that developers just don't get. Which I think is like really important to point out, because culturally, capturing a sport is part of what EA traditionally does quite well. At least to some degree. Like people might not always feel that way, but certainly with like the Fight Night games, which I assume are from the same developer.
They are. This is the Fight Night team.
Yeah, and I felt like they culturally, I felt like I was actually. It wasn't just the kind of like the quality of the actual boxing. It was the whole kind of like presentation of the entire thing, the commentary. Like it felt very genuine. If you're kind of lacking that, I think that's definitely a fair criticism. And the really technical stuff is actually, like, I think, incredibly important to a game like this. Like, I love Fight Night, and I think there's a lineage between those games and EA Sports MMA, and now obviously UFC. Yeah, no, I think it kind of sounds really cool. I'm a bit disappointed it's not coming out on PC. I assume there's some kind of reason for that, but no, man, that sounds cool. It's definitely something I still want to check out, even if there's some stuff they're getting wrong.
Yeah, I mean the main problem is it's a very good like stand up slash kickboxing game. It is good. It has that Fight Night lineage, and they brought in the extra elements of using knees and kicks as well. Really nicely, you can slip punches, you can dodge in and out, you can catch people at the right time, and it sort of knock them reeling, and then send them down to the mat with a flurry of strikes, and that stuff's really good. But one point that I'm making in the review, and it's the most exciting thing about this sport. I find other things about this sport exciting, but that's kind of a level when you really get into it. But the most obvious and exciting thing about this sport is when one person knocks down the other, and then they flurry on them. They attack them when they're on the ground, and when people don't understand the sport, it looks horrendous. But what you also have to understand is that the guy on bottom who's been knocked down has the chance to defend himself and has the chance to attack from his back. And that moment where the fighter who's scored the knockdown, you can see it, and they're like fuck, and they just get this huge adrenaline burst, and they sprint, and they're like, "Bah, this is my chance," and that is just missing from this game. It doesn't have that. And in the past, in EA MMA, which is made by a different team, that's actually made down in Florida, they translated that into a button mashing mini game, which wasn't particularly subtle, but it worked really well because it kind of captured that sense of mania, which that moment is. It's just like two people fighting for their lives on opposite ends of the spectrum. In the last UFC game from THQ, they captured that with a kind of protracted mini game. It was a separate system for how the rest of the combat worked, but it wasn't as simple as a button mashing thing. Like one person got a burst of adrenaline, you could see they run and start, the other person kind of had to cover up and dodge on the ground until they recovered. A better approximation than what it has here, which is you can dive on them, but most of the time you just end up swinging thin air and it looks stupid, or you just knock them out clean. And in a real MMA fight, that you don't knock a guy out clean and just stand there. The ref's going to come in and stop you. That's the point. The ref gets you off, and missing that is kind of like missing, I don't know, like in a football game, missing like a free kick into the top corner, or like a beautiful passing move finished with this, just like essence of football type stuff.
Yeah.
And as much as the rest of the game might look great in certain elements, missing that does suck. I'm sure it's going to be a big thing that they address for the next one, because all the criticism is around that right now in this game. There are more technical things, like a lot of the ground, the jiu-jitsu stuff, the grappling stuff. I don't know who the fuck motion captured that, but it wasn't a high-level UFC fighter. It wasn't a jiu-jitsu, even a jiu-jitsu blue belt, let alone jiu-jitsu black belt. There's stuff in this game that just plainly doesn't work in jiu-jitsu, and it's whoever the fuck motion captured it, I don't know what was. There's like a move that you see all the time in this game. It's called a scissor sweep. It's a really, really basic, the first week of jiu-jitsu move that you learn, but one of the things you learn about it is you have to trap the guy's arm in order to do it. I'm not going to go into detail about it. In this game, where UFC level fights, the best fighters in the world are fighting each other, the animation doesn't show the guy's arm being trapped. So without trapping the guy's arm, basically he can put his hand down and not get rolled over, so he's now the guy on the bottom. That's the basis of all of these types of moves. So you have to trap the guy's arm, right? It's just physics. That sport is just physics.
Okay.
And in here, you can flip him over and it doesn't trap the arm. Most people, I'm guessing 90% of people aren't going to notice that, but 10% really, really are, and they're the 10% that are making all the noise, and they're the 10% that go on to influence the other people when it comes to this world. So that sort of stuff is painful to see when it shouldn't be like that. When you've got perhaps guys on the top of that team who love the sport like they should, then that doesn't make it into the final product, quite frankly. And there are multiple things in the grappling game that look like that it just has people that are from that jiu-jitsu world just kind of screaming, banging their heads against the table. It's like, what the fuck is this shit? It looks stupid. But it's nitpicking. He's actually nitpicking because it doesn't matter that much. in the grand scheme of things. Anyway, I could ramble about this game forever. It's very fun. It's very good online, but it's not perhaps the classic it should have been. But the next one might be.
Yeah, that's what I was thinking actually. Like Fight Night Round 3, I never liked that game as much as everyone else. I accepted how kind of realistic it was, but it always felt like a bare bones kind of example of what the tech can do. This feels like very much the same sort of deal.
It kind of is, yeah.
Yeah. No, it's cool though, man. Like, I appreciate having that kind of expert knowledge on the subject and kind of feeding back on that stuff. Like, it just makes me wonder if EA really are just targeting it as a kind of casual beat 'em up and aren't as concerned about it being a simulation, but they should be. Like, it's...
No, I think they are. I just don't think they've got the... When I was talking to the guys, like, I don't want to throw him under the bus, but I was talking to the creative director, and he's the creative director of the last 2 Fight Nights as well. You know, I was talking, like, stuff was happening as I was playing against him, and I was going, oh, is this going to lead to this? And the look on his face was just of cluelessness, to be honest. When I spoke to the EA MMA guys a few years ago, those guys knew their shit, man. They just knew. They knew as much as me. Every fighter, every obscure fighter who fought years ago in Pride in Japan, you know, like the finish of this match from 1999. You know, they were nerds, and that's what you want in charge. You know, the guy in charge of FIFA is a football nerd, and that's important, I think. And that, when, you know, this guy is obviously a talented creative director, and you know, this game is very good, but he's not the guy. You know, he's not the guy that the fans want in charge.
Yeah.
Yeah. With that, but I don't want to be harsh about a guy, but it's just true.